At the hospital, my father stood in the doorway and sneered. "Stop wasting your time, Imogen. He's dying anyway. We're not sitting here like fools." My mother crossed her arms and added coldly, "Some of us have actual lives to live." Then they turned and left me there alone with my dying grandfather. 1 week after his funeral, I watched my father throw a small wooden box off the Rock River Bridge like it was garbage. Without thinking, I jumped into the freezing water, dragged it onto the muddy bank, and ripped it open. My hand started shaking so badly I could barely hold it. They thought that box would disappear forever. They were dead wrong. My name is Imogen Conway. I'm 33 years old. If you've ever been abandoned by family when someone you loved was dying, subscribe right now and comment the city you're watching from, because what I pulled out of that river is about to change everything they tried to bury. I need to go back to understand why that box mattered. Back to when I was 9 years old and my parents left me standing in my grandfather's living room with a small pink suitcase. It was October 2002. My mother crouched down, adjusted my collar, and said, "Imogen, honey, Grandpa's going to take care of you for a while. Mommy and Daddy need to work some things out." I didn't understand what "work some things out" meant. I was 9. I thought it meant a week, maybe 2 weeks. It meant forever. What they didn't tell me was that my father, Neil Conway, had a gambling problem. What they didn't tell me was that they'd burned through their savings at casinos across the Midwest. What they didn't tell me was that they were running from debt collectors and couldn't afford a child, slowing them down. My grandfather Patrick stood behind me, put his hand on my shoulder, and said quietly, "Don't worry, Imogen. I'll teach you something important: how to keep track of the truth." I didn't know what that meant either. Not then. My grandfather was a pharmacist. He'd worked at the same independent pharmacy in Madison, Wisconsin for 37 years before he retired in 2011. His house smelled like old books and coffee. His kitchen table was covered in newspapers he read every morning, meticulously, with a pen in hand to circle things he found interesting. He taught me about precision. In pharmacy, he said one afternoon when I was 11, watching him organize his medication cabinet, "There's no such thing as close enough. You're either right or someone gets hurt." He gave me a notebook that day. College ruled, plain cover. He wrote on the first page, "Documentation for Imogen, practice notes." "Write down what you observe," he told me, "not what you think happened. What actually happened. Dates, times, details. If you ever need to prove something important, documentation is your weapon." I filled that notebook with observations about school, about books I read, about little things I noticed. I still have it. It's in a box in my closet. The pages yellowed now, my 11-year-old handwriting looping and uncertain. 22 years later, I would understand exactly why he taught me that lesson. My parents came back occasionally, always when they needed money. 2005. My father showed up at Christmas with a business proposal. "Dad, I just need 5,000 to get this investment off the ground. I'll pay you back next month." He didn't pay it back. 2008. My mother called. Medical emergency. $8,000. "We'll pay you back as soon as the insurance clears." The insurance never cleared. 2012. Business loan. 12,000. "This time it's different, Patrick. This time it's legitimate." It wasn't. 2016. Legal fees. 15,000. "We got into some trouble, but it's not our fault. We just need help getting out of it." They always got out of it. My grandfather always helped. I watched this pattern from age 9 to age 32. I watched my grandfather write checks. I watched him keep every receipt, every promise, every broken commitment. He had a metal spike on his desk, one of those old-fashioned receipt spikes from his pharmacy days, and he impaled every piece of paper they gave him onto it. Every IOU, every scribbled promise, every text message screenshot. The spike got thicker every year. One day when I was 26, already working as a clinical pharmacist at UW Health, I asked him, "Grandpa, why do you keep giving them money?" He looked at me over his reading glasses. "Because I'm documenting something. You'll understand later." I didn't. Not yet. May 3rd, 2024. That's the day everything changed. My grandfather called me at work. His voice was steady, but I heard something underneath it. Something careful. "Imogen, I need you to come by after your shift." The doctor called with some test results. I knew before he said it. You develop an instinct in healthcare. You hear a certain tone, and you know. Stage 4, non-small cell lung cancer. The oncologist, Dr. Halverson, estimated 18 to 24 months. No cure, only management. I watched my grandfather process this information with the same methodical precision he'd approached everything else. He asked questions. He took notes. He discussed treatment options, hospice timelines, pain management protocols. Then he called my father. I heard that conversation from the kitchen. "Neil, the doctor says I have stage 4 lung cancer. I know we haven't talked much, but I'd like to see you before things get worse." There was a long pause. I couldn't hear my father's response, but I heard my grandfather's. "Sure, I understand. Just let me know when you can make it up." They never made it up. Not in May, not in June, not in July. On May 15th, 2024, my grandfather opened his laptop and created a new folder. I saw the name over his shoulder. For Imogen, timeline. "What's that for?" I asked. He smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. "Insurance?" 2 weeks later, I moved in. I gave notice at my apartment, reduced my hours at UW Health from full-time to part-time, and set up a bedroom in my grandfather's house. "You don't have to do this," he said, sitting at the kitchen table, the morning light making him look older than 79. "You raised me for 24 years, I said. "I'm taking care of you now. Don't argue." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "If anything happens to me," he said quietly, "if they try to say I gave up, you'll know the truth. Promise me you'll look for it." I promise. I didn't know what I was promising. Not then. But I kept that promise. And it saved everything. The decline started slowly, then accelerated. By August 2024, my grandfather needed oxygen during the day. By September, he needed it constantly. I kept a spiral notebook, the same kind he'd given me when I was 11. I documented everything, not because I planned to need it, because he'd taught me to document. It was instinct by then. September 8th, 2024. Oxygen saturation 87% this morning. Called Dr. Halverson. Admitted to UW Hospital for pneumonia. Room 438. September 10th. Fever broke. Breathing easier. He asked about Neil and Bryn. I lied and said they'd called. They hadn't. September 15th. Discharged. Home health nurse starting Monday. The pattern repeated through September and into October. Admission. Treatment. Brief recovery. Decline. Admission again. September 23rd through October 6th. 14 days for pain crisis and pleural effusion. The longest stretch. I was there every day. Every morning I signed the visitor log. Room 512. Patient. Patrick Conway. Visitor. Imogen Conway. Time in. 7:15 a.m. I'd look at the previous day's entry. My name. The day before that. My name. The day before that. My name. Nurse Jessica, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and genuine kindness, started bringing me coffee without asking. "Your grandfather talks about you constantly," she said one morning, handing me a cup. "He says you're the only pharmacist he trusts." "He taught me everything I know," I said. She glanced at the visitor log. "What about his son? Will he be visiting?" "He says he will," I said. I didn't add what I knew. He won't. October 2nd, 2024. That's the day I'll never forget. I'd been at the hospital for 8 hours. My grandfather was sleeping fitfully, the morphine keeping the pain at bay but making him confused when he woke up. I was sitting in the vinyl chair next to his bed, reviewing his medication chart, when I heard voices in the hallway. My father's voice. I stood up. The door opened. Neil Conway walked in wearing an expensive jacket I knew he couldn't afford. My mother Bryn behind him in designer sunglasses despite being indoors. "Hey, Dad," my father said, not moving past the doorway. "How are you feeling?" My grandfather's eyes opened slowly. "Neil, Bryn, you came." "Of course we came," my mother said, but she stayed near the door, phone in hand. Jessica appeared behind them. "Mr. Conway, we're so glad you're here. Will you be adding yourself to the visitor list? We can set up a schedule?" My father cut her off. "We'll see how things go. We're very busy." They stayed 10 minutes. 10 minutes. My father asked about the will. My mother asked about the house. My grandfather, foggy with medication, just nodded. Then my father looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time since walking in. "Stop wasting your time, Imogen. He's dying anyway. We're not sitting here like fools." My mother crossed her arms. "Some of us have actual lives to live." Then they turned and walked toward the elevator. Jessica stood in the doorway staring after them. She looked at me. I looked at the floor. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. That was the last time my parents visited my grandfather in the hospital. Once. For 10 minutes. In 8 weeks. My grandfather woke up an hour later. "Did they leave?" "Yes," I said. He closed his eyes. "Good. I don't want them to see what I'm recording." "What are you recording?" He didn't answer. He was already asleep again. October 25th, 2024. My grandfather was discharged to home hospice care. I converted my old childhood bedroom into a care room. Hospital bed, oxygen concentrator, medication cabinet. I managed his medications with the precision he'd taught me. Every pill photographed, every dose documented, every timestamp recorded. I didn't think I was collecting evidence. I thought I was being a good pharmacist, being thorough, being careful. But looking back, I think my grandfather knew. I think he knew exactly what he was training me to do. One night in early November, I was organizing his pills for the week. Morphine, dexamethasone, ondansetron, lorazepam, when I noticed him watching me from the bed. "You're documenting," he said. His voice was weak but clear. "Of course," I said. "That's what you taught me." He smiled. "Keep that notebook somewhere safe, Imogen. When I'm gone, they're going to lie about me, about how I died, about what I wanted. The notebook is proof. Proof of what? That I didn't give up. That I fought. That I was thinking clearly until the end." I didn't understand. I thought it was the morphine talking. It wasn't. The calls from my father increased in October and November, not to check on his father, to check on his father's assets. I didn't listen to most of them, but my grandfather did, and he recorded them. I didn't know about the recordings until much later. But one night I heard him on the phone, his voice sharp despite the oxygen cannula. "Neil, I'm not changing my will. Everything goes to Imogen. She's earned it." A pause. "You've gotten plenty over the years. More than $300,000 over 22 years. You never paid back a cent." Another pause. Longer. "If you want to contest it, that's your choice. But I'm going to make sure there's proof I was of sound mind. Goodbye." He hung up. He saw me in the doorway. "You heard that," he said. "Yeah. He's going to fight you after I'm gone, but I'm making sure you have what you need. Trust me." I trusted him. November 17th, 2025. The last entry in my documentation. Day 562. Oxygen 4 liters continuous. Morphine 15 milligrams every 3 hours. Pain level 8 out of 10 even with medication. He asked me to read to him from the newspaper. Local news, politics, the weather forecast for next week. He won't see next week. He knows it. I know it. We didn't say it. He's tired. I'm tired. But he's not giving up. He said so this morning. I'm not quitting, Imogen. I'm just finishing. That was the last thing I wrote in my spiral notebook. The next morning, November 18th, 2025, at 3:52 a.m., my grandfather died. I was holding his hand. His breathing had gotten shallow around midnight. I knew. You just know. He opened his eyes one last time, looked at me, and whispered, "Find the box." Then he was gone. I sat there in the pre-dawn silence, holding his hand as it grew cold, and I thought about the visitor log, about all those days, all those entries. Imogen Conway, Imogen Conway, Imogen Conway. I wasn't the only one at the funeral, but I was the only one who'd been there when it mattered. November 22nd, 2025, Cress Funeral Home on University Avenue in Madison. I arrived at 9:30 in the morning before anyone else. I sat in the viewing room alone with my grandfather's casket for 20 minutes. I didn't cry. I'd done my crying in the 256 days he'd been sick. I'd cried in hospital parking lots. I'd cried in pharmacy break rooms. I'd cried at 3 a.m. when he was sleeping and couldn't see. Now I just felt empty. At 10 o'clock, the doors opened. My mother walked in wearing a black dress that probably cost more than my grandfather's monthly medication budget. She was crying, loudly, before she even reached the casket. My father followed, carrying a large framed photo of my grandfather from the 1990s, back when he still had all his hair and didn't need oxygen to breathe. "Oh, Patrick," my mother sobbed, clutching the photo to her chest. "We're going to miss you so much." I watched this performance from the front row. I counted the number of times I'd seen them in the last 18 months. 3 times. Once at the hospital for 10 minutes. Once when they came to pick up paperwork. Once when they drove by the house to check on things, but didn't come inside. 3 times in 562 days. Now they were center stage, grief personified, receiving condolences from people who didn't know better. The service was scheduled for 2 p.m. My father insisted on giving the eulogy. He stood at the podium in a black suit, hands gripping the sides, and delivered what I can only describe as a masterpiece of fiction. "My dad was the strongest man I knew," he began, voice breaking on cue. "Watching him decline was the hardest thing our family has ever endured. Bryn and I are so grateful to Imogen for being there when we just couldn't bear to see him suffer." I sat in the front row and counted lies. Lie number 1. You didn't watch him decline. You saw him 3 times. Lie number 2. You're not grateful. You're strategic. Lie number 3. You could have been there. You chose not to. "Dad taught me about integrity," my father continued. "About family. About taking care of the people you love." Lie number 4. Lie number 5. Lie number 6. I stopped counting at 17. The eulogy was only 4 minutes long. People cried. People believed him. Why wouldn't they? He was the son, the flesh and blood, the one who should have been there. I was just the granddaughter, the caregiver, the invisible one. After the service, there was a reception in the funeral home's hospitality room. My parents worked the room like politicians, accepting condolences, dabbing their eyes, playing the part. A woman I didn't know touched my mother's arm and said, "You must be exhausted from all those hospital visits." My mother nodded, voice trembling. "We barely slept. It was so hard seeing him like that." I stood 6 feet away, holding a cup of coffee I wasn't drinking, and thought about the visitor log. The 42 days of my name. Only my name. Jessica, the nurse from UW Hospital, found me near the coffee station. She'd come to pay her respects on her day off. "Your grandfather was lucky to have you," she said quietly. "Thank you for everything," I said. "For the coffee. For being kind." She glanced across the room at my parents. "I worked in that ICU for 12 years. I've seen a lot of families. I've seen the ones who show up every day. And I've seen the ones who show up for the funeral." She paused. "Your grandfather talked about you every single day. He never mentioned them. Not once." I felt something crack inside my chest. Not grief. Something else. Validation, maybe. "I brought you something," Jessica said, pulling an envelope from her purse. I probably shouldn't, but I photocopied the visitor logs from all 3 of his admissions. 29 days total. Your name on every single line. I thought you might need it someday. I took the envelope. "Why would I need this?" She looked at my parents again. "Because families have a way of rewriting history, and you deserve proof that you were there." After most people left, my father called a small family meeting in one of the funeral home's conference rooms. Just him, my mother, and me. He sat down at the table like we were in a business meeting. "So," he said, pulling out a notepad, "about Dad's estate. The house is worth about $385,000. We'll need to list it soon. Market's good right now. I've already contacted a realtor." He slid a business card across the table. "Karen Whitfield, Coldwell Banker." I stared at the card. "You already contacted a realtor?" "Grandpa died 4 days ago." "We need to be practical, Imogen," my mother said. "Grief doesn't pay the bills." "Grandpa left a will," I said. "Everything goes to me." My father laughed. Not a real laugh. A cold, dismissive sound. "Imogen, that will was written when Dad was already sick. Diminished capacity. We'll contest it. This needs to be fair for everyone." "Fair?" I repeated. "Fair," he said. "The house, the retirement accounts, the life insurance. We'll split everything 3 ways." That's what Dad would have wanted. That's not what his will says. My father's expression hardened. "The will was written by a dying man who was on heavy pain medication. No judge is going to uphold that. Be reasonable." I stood up. "I have to go. Imogen, I need to go." I walked out of that conference room, out of the funeral home, and sat in my car in the parking lot for 20 minutes. My hands were shaking, not with grief, with rage. They weren't mourning, they were calculating. And they thought I'd just let it happen. They had no idea what my grandfather had left me. Not yet. 3 days later, November 25th, 2025, I received a certified letter. I signed for it at 10:23 in the morning. The return address: Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Inside was a single page. "Dear Ms. Conway, we are writing to inform you that the life insurance claim for Patrick Conway, policy number NM8396214L, is currently under review. We have received information suggesting the death may have been self-inflicted. Per the terms of the policy, claims involving suicide are subject to investigation. This information was provided by next of kin Neil Conway and Bryn Conway, who have submitted documentation regarding the deceased's mental state and medication usage. We will contact you if we require additional information." I read that letter 3 times. Self-inflicted, suicide, documentation regarding medication usage. My hands started shaking. I called the number at the bottom of the letter. A claims adjuster named Jonathan Pierce answered on the 3rd ring. "Mr. Pierce, my name is Imogen Conway. I received a letter about my grandfather's life insurance claim. Can you explain what's happening?" "Ms. Conway, yes. I have your file here." Papers rustling. Your grandfather's son filed a report claiming that Mr. Conway intentionally overdosed on prescription medication. He provided photos of prescription bottles found in the bedroom, several of which were empty or near empty. He also provided a written statement that Mr. Conway had expressed suicidal ideation in the weeks before his death. I felt cold. My grandfather did not overdose himself. I understand this is difficult. No, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. You don't understand. I'm a clinical pharmacist. I managed his medications personally. I documented every single dose. My grandfather did not overdose. Ms. Conway, we have to investigate. Your father provided photographic evidence of 8 prescription bottles. He stated that you may have been unaware of the extent of your grandfather's medication hoarding. 8 bottles. My grandfather only had 4 active prescriptions. Mr. Pierce, something is very wrong here. My grandfather had 4 prescriptions, not 8. Where did these photos come from? They were submitted by your father as evidence. I need to see them. I can't release investigative materials. My grandfather had 4 prescriptions: morphine, dexamethasone, ondansetron, and lorazepam, all filled at UW Health Pharmacy where I work. If there are 8 bottles, someone planted them. A long pause. Ms. Conway, these are serious allegations. They're serious lies, Mr. Pierce, and I can prove it. I drove to my grandfather's house. I still had the key. The house felt empty now. Too quiet. I went to his bedroom, opened the nightstand drawer. 8 prescription bottles. I picked up the first one. Oxycodone 10 milligrams, prescribed to Patrick Conway, filled October 20th, 2025, at Walgreens on East Washington Avenue. My grandfather never went to that Walgreens. His prescriptions were always filled at UW Health Pharmacy. I checked the second bottle. Same Walgreens, same date. 4 of the 8 bottles had labels from that pharmacy, labels I'd never seen before, medications that weren't part of his treatment plan. Someone had planted them. I took photos of every bottle. Then I logged into the UW Health prescription system. I had access with my grandfather's written consent from when I'd started managing his care. His prescription history was clear. 4 medications, 4 prescriptions, filled at UW Health. The dates matched my documentation perfectly. The bottles from Walgreens? They didn't exist in the system. The prescription numbers were fake. The doctor listed, a name I didn't recognize, wasn't even in our network. These weren't just planted bottles. They were fraudulent prescriptions. I sat on my grandfather's bedroom floor, surrounded by evidence of a crime, and finally understood. My parents had staged a suicide. They'd filed a false insurance claim. They were trying to void the $750,000 life insurance policy. If they could prove suicide, the policy was void. If the policy was void, the estate would be smaller, easier to contest. They'd thought of everything, except one thing. My grandfather had predicted this. That's why he'd been documenting. That's why he'd told me to find the box. But I still hadn't found it. Not yet. November 29th, 2025, 7:15 in the morning. I was driving to work, taking my usual route through downtown Madison, when I saw my father's black Audi parked near the Rock River Bridge. I wouldn't have thought anything of it except for the way he was standing. Middle of the bridge. Looking around. Holding something small. I pulled over 300 feet away and watched. He walked to the center of the bridge carrying a wooden box, maybe 10 inches by 8 inches, the size of a shoebox but thicker. He stood there for maybe 30 seconds, looked left, looked right, not carefully, just a glance. Then he threw it over the railing. I heard the splash from where I was parked. He walked back to his car, got in, drove away. He didn't look back once. I didn't think. I just moved. I kicked off my shoes, ran to the riverbank. The water was murky, brown with November sediment. I could see the box settling into the mud about 8 feet down near the bank. The water was so cold it knocked the air out of my lungs. I couldn't see anything for the first 3 seconds. My eyes adjusted. There it was, sinking into soft mud. I pushed off the bottom, grabbed it with both hands. It was heavier than I thought. Wooden. Solid. When I surfaced, gasping, I dragged it onto the muddy bank. My hands were shaking, from cold or adrenaline or both. I ripped open the latch. Inside, everything was wrapped in plastic freezer bags and duct tape. My grandfather had waterproofed it. He'd known someone would try to destroy it. The first thing I pulled out was a leather notebook, sealed in a gallon Ziploc bag. The cover had one word written in his handwriting: documentation. Below that, for Imogen, May 2024 to November 2025. I opened the bag, pulled out the notebook, started reading. May 15th, 2024. Day 1. 8 a.m. Morphine sulfate 5 milligrams, P.O. Photo number 001. 8 a.m. Dexamethasone 4 milligrams, P.O. Photo number 002. 12 p.m. Ondansetron 8 milligrams, PRN nausea. Photo number 003. 8 p.m. Morphine sulfate 5 milligrams, PO. Photo number 004. Notes. Imogen moved in today. Explain to her I'm starting this log. She asked why. I said, so you'll have proof I didn't give up. 562 pages. One for every day from May 15th, 2024 to November 17th, 2025. Every single medication he took. Every dose. Every time. Cross-referenced with photo numbers. He'd documented everything. I pulled out the next item. 3 USB drives in individual Ziploc bags, labeled videos, audio, documents, then a stack of papers in a waterproof folder. Bank statements, receipts, legal documents. At the bottom, a sealed envelope. I opened it with shaking, muddy hands. Imogen, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and they've tried to lie about how I died. In this box is 18 months of truth. Every pill I took, every day I was alone, every conversation I recorded. Don't let them rewrite the ending. You know the dosage? They'll get it wrong. Prove it. I love you. Grandpa. I sat on that freezing riverbank, soaking wet, covered in mud, holding my grandfather's final gift. And I cried. Not from grief this time. From understanding. He'd been building a case against his own son. For me. And now it was my job to present it. I called in sick to work. I drove home, changed into dry clothes, and spread everything from the box across my kitchen table. The leather notebook, the USB drives, the financial records, the letter. I started with the notebook. 562 entries, each one methodical. Date, time, medication name, dosage, photo reference number, notes section, June 3rd, 2024, day 20. Morning medications on schedule, pain manageable. Neil called asking about my will, didn't ask how I was feeling. Recording saved as audio file 003, September 15th, 2024. Day 124. Discharged from hospital. Imogen brought me home. She set up a medication chart on the refrigerator. She photographs every pill before I take it. She learned that from me. October 2nd, 2024. Day 141. Neil and Bryn visited hospital for 10 minutes. Neil asked if I'd changed my will yet. I said no. He said I should think about being fair to family. I am being fair. Imogen is my family. November 10th, 2025. Day 545. Pain is worse. Imogen increased morphine to 15 milligrams. Still within prescription range. If they say I overdosed, look at the log. Every pill accounted for. Every dose photographed. I didn't give up. I fought. November 17th, 2025. Day 562. This will probably be my last entry. I can barely hold the pen. Imogen is sleeping in the chair next to my bed. I don't want to wake her. If this is the end, I want her to know. I took exactly what I was prescribed. Nothing more. I didn't give up. I fought until I couldn't anymore. I closed the notebook. Then I plugged in the first USB drive. Videos. 72 files, organized by month. I clicked on the first one. May 18th, 2024. My grandfather appeared on screen, sitting in his bedroom, wearing his reading glasses. He looked directly at the camera. Today is May 18th, 2024. My name is Patrick Conway. I'm 79 years old. I was diagnosed with stage 4 non-small cell lung cancer on May 3rd, 2024. Today, I am of sound mind. I'm recording this video because I know my son, Neil Conway, will try to claim I wasn't competent when I made my will. This video is proof. Imogen is taking care of me. My son hasn't called in 3 weeks. I watched 6 videos, one from each month. June 15th, 2024. Still of sound mind. Pain is increasing, but manageable. Neil called today asking about my retirement accounts. He didn't ask how I was feeling. August 20th, 2024. Sound mind. Breathing is harder. Imogen takes me to all my appointments. She documents everything. She's the best pharmacist I know. Better than I ever was. October 15th, 2024. Sound mind, in hospital again. Visitor log shows only Imogen. I told Neil I'm leaving everything to her. He said he'd contest it. Let him try. November 10th, 2025. 8 days before he died. His voice was weaker, but his eyes were clear. If you're watching this, they've said I killed myself. I didn't. Look at the medication log. Every pill is accounted for. If there are extra bottles, they were planted. If they say I was depressed, they're lying. I'm tired. I'm in pain. But I didn't give up. I fought. For Imogen. USB drive 2. Audio recordings. 11 files. Phone conversations between my grandfather and my father. I played the first one. August 14th, 2025. My father's voice. Dad, you need to be realistic. That house is worth almost $400,000. If you leave everything to Imogen, Bryn and I get nothing. My grandfather. You've gotten plenty over the years, Neil. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've given you over $300,000 in loans you never repaid. Pause. That's different. Is it? Dad, you're not thinking clearly. The cancer, the medication, it's affecting your judgment. My judgment is fine, Neil. This conversation is over. Click. I played 5 more calls. Each one escalated. My father getting more aggressive, more desperate, more threatening. The last recording was from October 28th, 2025. 3 weeks before my grandfather died. Neil, Dad, I'm serious. If you don't change that will, we'll contest it. We'll say you weren't competent. We'll tie it up in probate for years. Imogen won't see a dime. Patrick. Then I guess I better make sure there's proof I was competent. Goodbye, Neil. Click. USB drive 3. Scanned documents. Prescription records from UW Health Pharmacy. Official system printouts showing exactly 4 active prescriptions for my grandfather throughout the entire 18 months. The same 4 medications in my documentation. The same 4 in his notebook. The extra 4 bottles my parents planted, they didn't exist in this system. Also in the folder, bank statements, highlighted withdrawals. My father had access to my grandfather's checking account. He'd convinced my grandfather it was to help with bills. June 3rd, 2024. $2,500 withdrawn. Note in my grandfather's handwriting. Neil, unauthorized. July 18th, 2024. $5,000. Neil, unauthorized. September 1st, 2024, $8,000. Neil, unauthorized. 27 withdrawals over 18 months. Total, $63,000. And beneath all of that, a handwritten ledger. The one my grandfather had been keeping for 22 years. Every loan, every broken promise, every dollar never repaid. The final entry. Total loan to Neil, $329,000. Total repaid, $0. If I die and Neil claims he deserves my estate, show him this. Then show him the door. I sat at my kitchen table until 2 a.m. going through every document, every video, every recording. By sunrise, I understood everything. My grandfather hadn't just been sick. He'd been building a case against his own son. For me, every video proved mental competency. Every medication log proved no overdose. Every recording proved Neil's real motives. Every bank statement proved financial abuse. My parents thought they'd covered every angle, planted evidence, filed false claims, staged a suicide. They'd only made one mistake. They'd underestimated a retired pharmacist who spent 37 years understanding that documentation is everything. And now I had to decide what to do with it. November 30th, 2025. I called the attorney whose card my grandfather had given me. Douglas Brennan, estate law. I got an appointment the same day. His office was downtown Madison, wood-paneled, professional. Diplomas on the wall. A photo of him and his wife on the desk. Married 41 years according to the anniversary card propped behind it. I walked in carrying the wooden box. Mr. Brennan, my grandfather was Patrick Conway. He left me your card and told me to contact you when he died. Imogen, he said, standing to shake my hand. Patrick talked about you often. I'm very sorry for your loss. Please, sit. I sat. Then I opened the box and started pulling out contents. The medication log, the USB drives, the bank statements, the recordings, the ledger. I spread it all across his desk. Douglas Brennan put on his reading glasses and started reviewing. He didn't say anything for 30 minutes. He just read, watched videos, listened to audio clips, reviewed financial documents. Finally, he looked up at me. Ms. Conway, he said slowly, this is the most comprehensive documentation I've seen in 30 years of estate practice. My grandfather was a pharmacist. He understood documentation. This isn't just about defending a will anymore, Douglas said. This is potential fraud. Elder financial abuse, insurance fraud. Your parents didn't just challenge an estate, they committed crimes. Can you prove it? He tapped the medication log. 562 days of documentation, cross-referenced with hospital records, pharmacy records, and video testimony. Yes, I can prove it. December 3rd, 2025. Douglas arranged a meeting with Northwestern Mutual's fraud investigator, Rachel Kovacs, senior investigator, 18 years of experience. We met at Douglas's office. I brought copies of everything. Rachel spread the photos of the planted pill bottles across the conference table. She picked up one. This prescription label says it was filled at Walgreens on East Washington on October 20th, 2025, she said. But your grandfather's medical records show he was under home hospice care at that time. He couldn't have picked up a prescription. That's correct, I said. And these 4 bottles don't appear in the UW Health Pharmacy system. They were filled somewhere else. By someone else. Rachel pulled up security footage on her laptop. Walgreens provided surveillance from October 20th. Does this woman look familiar? The screen showed my mother at the pharmacy counter, handing over what looked like prescriptions. The pharmacist checking IDs, processing the order. That's my mother, Bryn Conway. The prescriptions were filled using a stolen identity, Rachel said. The ID matched your mother's photo but had someone else's name and information. That's identity theft and prescription fraud. Both felonies. She closed the laptop. Ms. Conway, I need you to understand something. If we prove fraud, your parents will face criminal charges. They could go to prison. The DA will prosecute. This won't be quiet. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my grandfather, about the medication log, about the 562 days he spent documenting the truth so I wouldn't have to fight blind. They made it loud when they lied at his funeral, I said. I'm just turning up the volume. December 8th, 2025. Douglas arranged a deposition with Dr. Halverson, my grandfather's oncologist. The doctor sat in the conference room and stated for the record, I treated Patrick Conway for 18 months. I saw him bi-weekly. At no point did he express suicidal thoughts. His pain was managed appropriately with morphine titrated to effect, documented meticulously by his granddaughter, who is a clinical pharmacist. The claim that he stockpiled and overdosed on medication is inconsistent with his prescription history, his pharmacy records, and the detailed logs I've reviewed. In my medical opinion, this claim of suicide is medically impossible and demonstrably false. After the deposition, Dr. Halverson pulled me aside. Imogen, your grandfather talked about you in every appointment. He was so proud. In October, he told me, if anything happens to me, Neil will try to take everything from her. But I've made sure she'll have proof. He knew what was coming. He prepared you for this. Over the next 2 weeks, Douglas collected witness statements. Jessica, the ICU nurse, Patrick Conway's granddaughter, visited every single day of his 29-day hospital stay. She managed his medications with professional precision. I never saw his son visit once. When I asked Patrick about family support, he said, Imogen is my family, the rest are just relatives. Pharmacy colleagues from my grandfather's old workplace. Patrick retired in 2011, but he never stopped being a pharmacist. When he got sick, he told us he was documenting his care, so they can't lie about me later. We thought he was being paranoid. He wasn't. Dorothy Pemberton, neighbor, age 74. I lived next door for 15 years. I never saw Neil visit during Patrick's illness, but I saw Imogen's car there every day. One time in September, I asked Patrick how he was doing. He said, I'm dying, Dorothy, but I'm not stupid. I know what my son wants. He's not getting it. By December 22nd, we had testimony from 12 witnesses, 4 medical professionals, documented financial abuse, recorded threats, video evidence of mental capacity, and an airtight medication log proving no overdose occurred. My parents had 8 fake pill bottles and a eulogy. The case wasn't close. January 15th, 2026. Douglas scheduled what he called a settlement conference at his office. My parents arrived with their attorney, a man named Todd from a budget law office in a strip mall. He looked nervous. Neil and Bryn walked into the conference room smiling, like this was a friendly negotiation. Todd sat down and opened with, We're glad we could all come together to resolve this amicably. Douglas didn't smile. He slid a 3-inch binder across the table. This is a copy of the evidence we've provided to Northwestern Mutual's Fraud Investigation Unit and the Dane County District Attorney's Office. You have 5 minutes to review it. The smile disappeared from my father's face. My mother opened the binder, saw the medication log. Her face went pale. My father flipped to the section with photos of the planted pill bottles. He stopped, stared. Their attorney Todd looked confused. What is this? Douglas answered. Evidence of insurance fraud, elder financial abuse, and identity theft. Your clients filed a false claim stating Patrick Conway committed suicide by overdose. They planted fraudulent prescription bottles. They financially exploited him while he was dying. And they did all of this to void a $750,000 life insurance policy and contest a valid will. Todd turned to my parents. Is this true? My father didn't answer. Douglas pressed play on his laptop. My grandfather's face filled the screen. The video from October 15th, 2024. I'm of sound mind. I'm 79 years old. I have stage 4 cancer, but my brain works fine. My son, Neil Conway, called me today and threatened to contest my will. I'm recording this so there's no question. I want everything to go to Imogen. Neil has taken enough. My mother started crying. Real tears this time, not the performance tears from the funeral. My father's jaw clenched. Douglas continued. We also have 11 recorded phone conversations where Neil threatened and coerced Patrick. Bank statements showing $63,000 in unauthorized withdrawals. Witness testimony from medical staff, neighbors, and colleagues. And pharmacy security footage of Bryn Conway purchasing fraudulent prescriptions using a stolen ID. He paused. Walgreens has the footage. The pharmacy tech remembered because buying prescription bottles with a fake ID is unusual. My mother's face went white. Todd stood up. I need to speak with my clients privately. Sit down, Douglas said. It wasn't a request. Todd sat. Douglas slid another document across the table. You have two options. Option 1. You sign a confession admitting to fraud. You agree to repay $63,000 in unauthorized withdrawals over 24 months. You issue a public statement acknowledging your false claims. Northwestern Mutual drops the criminal referral to the DA. And option 2? My father asked. Full criminal prosecution. Insurance fraud carries up to 10 years federal time. Elder financial abuse carries up to 15 years state time. Identity theft adds another 5. You do the math, Mr. Conway. Silence. My father looked at me for the first time since walking in. You're really going to do this? Destroy your own parents? I met his eyes. You destroyed yourselves. I'm just showing people the receipts. My mother broke first. We didn't think anyone would check, she sobbed. We thought once he was gone, it would just... no one would question it. Shut up, Bryn, my father hissed. Don't say anything. But it was too late. Todd was already standing, packing his briefcase. I'm withdrawing from this case, he said. I wasn't informed of fraudulent evidence. You two need a criminal attorney, immediately. He left. My parents sat alone at the conference table. No lawyer, no strategy. Just two people who'd bet everything on a dying man's silence and lost. Douglas gave them 48 hours to decide. January 17th, 2026. They signed the confession. Not because they were sorry. They weren't. They signed because 30 years in federal prison was worse than admitting they'd tried to steal from a dead man. The confession was 2 pages. It acknowledged filing a fraudulent insurance claim, planting false evidence, financial exploitation during my grandfather's final illness, submitting falsified documentation to Northwestern Mutual. They agreed to repay $63,000 at $2,625 per month for 24 months. Withdraw all claims against the estate. Issue a public statement. Not contest the will. In exchange, the DA declined to file criminal charges. My father's hand shook as he signed. My mother cried the whole time. When it was done, my father looked at me one last time. You won, he said. Bitter. Cold. No, I said. Grandpa won. I just proved he was right about you. They left Douglas's office at 3:52 p.m. I never saw them again. January 28th, 2026. Northwestern Mutual's investigation concluded. The report found no evidence of suicide, substantial evidence of fraudulent claim. Medication documentation proves proper care. Video testimony proves mental capacity. Medical records confirm appropriate prescriptions. Planted evidence identified as fraudulent. Claim approved. Beneficiary, Imogen Conway. February 3, 2026. The check arrived. $750,000. Policy NM-839-6214-L, issued March 1998. Paid in full. February 10, 2026. The settlement was finalized. My grandfather's will was executed. Everything came to me. The house, the retirement accounts, the life insurance, total estate value, approximately $1.13 million. February 15th, 2026. The public statement was published in the Wisconsin State Journal. We, Neil and Bryn Conway, acknowledge that we filed a false insurance claim regarding Patrick Conway's death. We planted fraudulent evidence and made false statements about his mental state and medication usage. We take full responsibility for our actions and apologize to Imogen Conway for the harm we caused. 3 sentences. No mention of love, no mention of regret. Just legal liability management. I kept the newspaper clipping. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. I sat in my grandfather's house, my house now, and thought about what to do with it all. The money could sit in a bank. The house could be sold. I could walk away and try to forget. But that's not what my grandfather wanted. He'd spent his last 18 months building something. Not just a legal case, a lesson. He taught me that precision matters, that documentation matters, that truth matters even when it's hard. And he taught me that love isn't about biology. It's about showing up. February 2026. I proposed a partnership with UW Health Community Outreach Program. The pitch: a medication adherence pilot program for elderly patients. Free medication management, education, documentation support, help for people who couldn't afford mistakes. I'd fund the startup costs. UW Health would provide matching grants and administrative support. March 2026. We secured office space, hired a coordinator, recruited volunteer pharmacists. April 12th, 2026. The Conway Care Medication Management Program launched. We served 15 patients the first month. By June, we were at 50. The program helps elderly people manage complex medication schedules. We teach them to document, to track, to understand that every dose matters. We named it after my grandfather, Patrick Conway, Farm D. On the wall of the intake office, there's a quote: "Dosage matters, documentation matters, you matter." Every patient gets a medication logbook on their first visit, just like the one my grandfather kept. April 2026. 3 months after the settlement. 4 months after I pulled that box from the river. I was alone in the house, sorting through my grandfather's belongings, when I found one more USB drive. It had fallen behind his desk drawer. The label said, "Final for Imogen. Play when you're ready." I plugged it in. My grandfather appeared on screen. The video was dated November 10th, 2025, 8 days before he died. "Imogen," he said, his voice weak but clear. "If you're watching this, everything worked out the way I planned. You found the box. You found the truth. You proved them wrong. I'm so proud of you. Not because you won, but because you fought for what was right even when it was hard. I want you to know something. You didn't just take care of me these last 18 months. You gave me a reason to keep fighting. You gave me hope. Now I want you to take all of this, the house, the money, the time I bought you by documenting everything, and build something beautiful. Build something that helps people. Build something that proves love isn't about biology. It's about showing up. You showed up, Imogen. Every single day. Now show the world what that means." The video ended. I sat there in his old office, in the chair he used to sit in when he taught me about pharmacy, about precision, about truth. I cried. Not from grief this time, from gratitude. He'd given me everything he had. Not just money or property. He'd given me proof that I mattered, that what I did mattered, that showing up every single day wasn't invisible. He'd documented it all so no one could ever take that away from me. 6 months after my grandfather died, I stood in the house he left me, surrounded by patients he'd never meet, continuing work he started decades ago. My parents live 2 hours away now. We don't speak. I don't hate them. I just don't have room in my life for people who think showing up is optional. The Conway Care Program serves 300 patients now. Every one of them gets a medication logbook on their first visit. On the inside cover, it says, "Dosage matters, documentation matters, you matter." My grandfather taught me that precision beats poison, but more than that, he taught me that love isn't measured in words at funerals. It's measured in visitor logs, in medication schedules, in someone staying when everyone else leaves. If you're taking care of someone right now, an aging parent, a sick partner, anyone who needs you, document everything. Not because you're expecting a fight, but because someday, someone might try to rewrite the story. Don't let them. The truth is in the details. Always. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever been the one who showed up when no one else did, leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me your story. And if you're a caregiver right now, feeling alone, feeling invisible, I see you. What you're doing matters. Document it. Not for proof, for memory. Because someday you'll want to remember you showed up. That's everything.